let's dive into horror, my children! Twice before in seasons past, we've had the opportunity to look at DC's Hill House comics. But how about we plunge into one now that's actually written by Joe Hill? At the Navy town on Attu Island in Alaska, a distress call is received for the survey ship Derleth. The problem is that the Derleth has been considered lost since 1983, almost 40 years ago. The next day, David Lacombe, a representative from the Rococo International Corporations, meets with Captain Carpenter of the salvage vessel McCready. I get it! Carpenter, along with his two brothers, Clark and Russell, and their crew are being hired to recover the Derleth. Normally, Rococo has a larger salvage company they employ for this kind of operation, but there are some difficulties. For starters, the Derleth is technically in international waters, an area disputed between Russia and the United States. They would pursue it legally, but the company doesn't want to wait on the formal permits to recover the craft, which is why the larger salvage company won't touch it. The son of one of the company's executives was on board, and thus they want to recover the bodies, the black box, and some scientific research they were doing. Lacombe will be coming along as an official representative, along with a marine biologist, Maria Lamb, to help in the recovery, as well as her assistant Bill. They arrive at the Sinakik Ungayagagta atoll, where the boat is partially capsized, the distress signal going out because of solar panels that have finally managed to get a clear look at the sun after all this time. It's commented that the ship is like a zombie. Dead, but it doesn't know it. There's nothing really alive inside of it. Why isn't there a horror comic called Zombot? I know there was a brief TV show, but I look at comic books here, my children, unlike some other comic reviewers I could name. Don't even review them, you spotlight them. Sure I do, I just know how to keep it short. Brevity, damn it! They decide to have a little fun, and some of the crew camp out on the beach that night. Mariah goes off that night to pee, until she discovers a dead body with worms in its throat that tells her it's alright if she needs to scream. Everyone assumes she was just in shock and a little drunk when they catch up with her, since the body does not move or speak. They bag it up, though are a little confused, since his throat cut looks to be self-inflicted, and it clearly happened recently. Why kill yourself when your rescue is imminent? The next morning, over some bad coffee, Mariah assumes she just imagined it too, though another mystery is that his eyes are gone. Back on the boat, Lacombe notes that this is the son of the executive he mentioned before, yet he doesn't look like he's aged since his photograph. What's more, when they leave the body, it moves on its own out of the bag. There's more mystery to be found. A robot probe shows that the Derleth was damaged by explosives, and it currently contains a rather sizable sea serpent. And on the beach, Mariah examines crustaceans with strange deformities along the coastline. She dives down to get a quick look, discovering an ancient pillar depicting faces with worms crawling out of the eyes and mouth. Back on the boat, the corpse takes an emergency axe to the systems and the engine, starting a fire. They get it under control, but the engineer is killed by the corpse as well. And while this is going on, Russell discovers a cave that he decides to climb in to get more information. And the number pi is written to 1,000 places on the wall. Ah, math zombies! This is what typing of the dead leads to. Speaking of, Russell is soon met by the survivors of the Derleth, all of their eyes plucked out. They blame it on a worm native to the atoll that causes a kind of blindness. But of course, as Russell notes, they seem to be very young for survivors of a 40-year-old shipwreck. Mariah and Clark spot the burning boat and decide they have to head back, but are soon met by Russell and Bill, leading the zombies to them. They gave Bill something to hold in his hand, something so precious he refuses to let anyone else gaze upon it, while Russell has headphones put on him that seem to give him a form of telepathy that's making him quasi-catatonic. The lead zombie is Julian, and leads the crew of their would-be rescuers back to their camp to be more comfortable. Once there, Captain Carpenter wants to know exactly what's going on and whether they're prisoners, but Lacombe fills in some details about why they're really here. Some months after the Derleth originally eventually went lost, her captain was discovered clutching a piece of paper containing a mathematical proof that revolutionized the field. There were also some numbers on that, like the old type out 80085 on a calculator and it spells boobs joke, but was actually a math joke that spelled out hello, an invitation for more that Lacombe figured out. He figures the mathematical proof and the hello were basically an invitation to come find more such discoveries. Julian claims they've done wonderful mathematical things on the island, proofs and conjectures and scientific formulas on the universe that revolutionize everything. They've even solved pi to its final digit. Turns out it was the letter H. That's why nobody could figure it out. Hell, they've even found a small amount of an oil that could power the entire state of California for 1,000 years. Julian says they're happy to give all this knowledge back to the world, or to Lacombe and his company in particular, but they want something in return. But before they explain what that is, they also show off the object that Bill is holding. Well, to be accurate, they show it to 3 other men on the crew, who go insane upon spotting it and kill each other to try to get it. Bill once again clutching it in his hand for dear life, even as one of his eyes is clawed out. Lacombe wants to bargain with them despite the objections of the others. After all, they're still prisoners of the zombies, so they hold all the cards anyway. Carpenter demands to know what they really are, and Julian is happy to show off. They're worm creatures depicted in the art, a hive mind that is able to control the bodies of the Derleth crew. The sea serpent they saw in the wreckage was but one of them grown to prodigious size. Julian finally explains what they want. To leave. They are repulsed by this planet's people as much as the humans are of them, and the way to do so is in the crater that made the atoll. It was not an asteroid as believed in history, but rather their ship that crashed so long ago. There's an outer hatch that would be fatal to them if they tried to dive down and touch it due to an energy running through it, but it's harmless to the humans. As such, they want one of the crew to dive down and open it so they can use it to escape the Earth. They had originally approached the crew of the Derleth for this task, but had commandeered some of the crew for the job. The captain was not happy with that and fought them all the way, blowing up her own ship to keep them from leaving the island. The worms tried to infect 2 of the crew to convince Carpenter to agree, Clark and the ship's Dr. Bosley, but Clark is fine. The infected Bosley says that Clark has made himself unclean and is therefore an unsuitable host. Still, the zombies want what they want, and Lacombe says to give them 24 hours to examine the oil and come to an agreement. The zombies accept. On the ride back, Russell saying that he believes that the god-awful coffee, made from mushrooms on the island, was responsible for giving some of them immunity from the worms. Still, Lacombe points out that does not exactly give one immunity from being stabbed. They examine everything they've got. The oil is exactly what they said it is. An X-ray of the rock being clutched doesn't reveal anything other than it being a rock, and they can't exactly examine it any more thoroughly without better equipment. Russell has mild cerebral trauma from the psychic headphones. Lacombe still insists that they have to take this deal, but no one else wants to work with murderous worms on this. Some people really just need to be open-minded about other species. Look at me! I make friends with all sorts of creatures. Worms, ghosts, skulls, spiders, even humans, and they're disgusting. Captain Carpenter realizes that the corpse they brought on board was a Trojan horse and grabs it, allowing them to capture some of the worms in its body and communicate with the remaining ones. Carpenter does not believe they'll just leave the island if they open the hatch, so Russell volunteers to use these psychic headphones to try to read their minds and find out the truth. He dies in the attempt, but he tells them what they need to know. Inside the hatch is not an escape ship. The worms are not worms. They're reproductive cells. If they get inside the hatch, they'll give birth to a monstrous creature whose power could destroy the Earth. Lacombe, using the distraction, seals up the group. He might have been reasonable enough before to know the problem, but unfortunately, he saw the X-ray of the stone in Bill's hand, and he needs to hold it with the help of the worms. To him, it was like seeing the face of God. Bah! Overrated! Now, if you saw my face in there, I'd understand. Lacombe makes the agreement with them, getting the zombies to cut off Bill's hand so they can get the stone from him. The others are tied to the ancient pillars they found, sacrificial totems that criminals would be tied to and offered to the worms by a long-lost tribe. The tides will rise and cover them over the day, but that will give enough time for Moarte to dive down and open the hatch. She succeeds and the worms vacate the human hosts to go join the egg, giving birth to a creature. A Russian submarine, which has come by to investigate, is soon attacked and devoured by the newborn monster. But that's the least of their concerns. The larger it grows, the more of reality itself it begins tearing apart, like a Lovecraftian eating machine, devouring the cosmos. After knocking out Lacombe, Carpenter has a plan thanks to what Russell had told them. Use the stone to entice the creature back down into the hatch, then detonate the powerful oil. Carpenter has Bill restrain Moarte to make sure she doesn't try to go herself, and does the deed, luring it down and blowing it and the hatch the hell up. Moarte and Bill head out on a boat to try to get back to civilization, while Lacombe is left on the island with a single remaining worm. Plunge is yet again a glorious example of the Hill House comics. This may be only our third visit in the last 10 years, but it won't be our last.